Hello guys, welcome back to the What's Your Why podcast. This is episode number 8. We are nearly done for the year. This is actually the last episode for the year. So quickly, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's, listened, sent through kind messages and shown support. It means the absolute world to me. And I'm just happy that I'm keep showing up and haven't pulled the towel in just yet. So yeah, today on this episode, we speak to someone really special. She doesn't really need an introduction. You'll find that this is going to be a very beneficial episode. So I challenge you to open up your minds and ears and take something away from today's episode, because I know you guys will get a lot out of this. Nerida, welcome. Thank you for coming on today's episode.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here, and I hope your guests get a lot out of this chat.
Awesome. So I have a lot of young listeners.
Yeah.
And I just want to quickly, I know it's hard because you're very, very knowledgeable and very, you know a lot of stuff. So I know it's hard for you to kind of scramble that down into a couple sentences, but if you could quickly just explain who you are and what you do in just a couple sentences for my young listeners out there.
Yeah, great. So my name's Nerida Bint. I'm an emotional intelligence coach. I basically do a mix of things. I work with people who want to become emotional intelligence coaches and help other people. I work with leaders who recognize they need some emotional skills to manage their people. And I work with parents. I work with couples. I work with all sorts of people who are just feeling a little bit lost, a little bit confused. Maybe they have low self-worth and they're really struggling to sort of like feel, good in the world. Like they're struggling to achieve their goals, to feel authentic, to feel vulnerable and honest about who they are. So I basically work with people in that space.
Yeah, awesome. So can you explain to me what emotional intelligence is, and then also how has your definition changed over the years of emotional intelligence?
Great question. So emotional intelligence is essentially the ability to identify and attune to the emotions that you're feeling, allow yourself to release them without any judgment and move through them. And it's the way that we interact with each other. It's our ability to be vulnerable and honest about how we're feeling rather than suppressing it, dismissing it, avoiding it, distracting it. And my definition has changed. When I was your age, I was diagnosed with depression. So I'm 42 next week. So I'm literally double your age. Scary, but true. But when I was 21, I felt very, very lost for such a long time. And I was diagnosed with depression. And that diagnosis never really sat well with me. I was told over and over, you've got a chemical imbalance in the brain, and I just could not accept that. And my definition now is so far from that. I love that people use the frame mental health in order to speak about this topic. But what I think where we go wrong is we believe that only some people have mental health and some don't, whereas actually every human being on the planet experiences emotions. Some of us have a better relationship with them than others, but a lot of people are actually really stuck who are just pushing their emotions down, and they don't actually have a good level of emotional health or intelligence because of the way that they are within themselves. But on the outside, it might look like they do. I work with lots and lots of, very wealthy, very well-known people, local, interstate, international, that you would look at on Instagram and think, wow, they've got their life together. They're so happy. They're so wealthy. They're so successful, but yet when I work with them one-on-one, they are so lonely, so sad, so depressed, and so lost. So I just want to encourage everyone to understand, if you're a human being, if you have a heart, if you have a body, you have emotions.
Well said. Well said. I got a lot of young listeners, and they're probably listening now, and they're like potentially thrown off by this like emotional intelligence, because being a young male especially, I know we definitely would neglect a conversation like this. I just want to quickly ask, why is it important, and how can you improve it for people out there that this might be the first time they've heard something like this come up?
Yeah, so essentially everything that we do, every part of our life that is not going the way that we want it to, is actually, it's happening because we're avoiding an emotion. So there are actually 4 main heavy emotions that we struggle with. There's anger, sadness, fear, and shame. So let me ask you, what can I ask you a little bit about you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What's one thing that you struggle with in life?
This was later in the script, but it's good that it's come up now. It's self-doubt.
Yep.
Being a creative.
Yep.
I get bad imposter syndrome. I've spoken about it.
Yep.
All that. So yeah, self-doubt.
Right. So that's actually self-doubt is actually a coping mechanism to manage shame. So there's actually a lot of shame in your emotional body that you have not yet felt and released.
Yeah,
okay.
right. Wow.
And so you're avoiding feeling that shame, right? So when we think about imposter syndrome, how long did you think about launching this podcast before you actually did it?
I knew I always wanted to do it. It was just more of a fact of waiting for not waiting for the right time. I wanted a space like this. And then when I saw the boys launch the newest studio, I was like, bang, right on it.
Great.
So within a month of this launching, I was like, all right, now's the time. Okay. So I wasn't standoffish. I just wanted to make sure it was like this.
Awesome. Okay. So have you ever delayed doing anything in your life because you've been afraid?
In my past, definitely.
Yeah, but you're obviously working through a lot of this stuff.
But now definitely not, because I've done a lot of development in my teenage years, and I've come out the other side and I've realised a lot of things through that. So yeah.
Yeah, so what you probably have actually done is you've actually worked through a lot of your shame. So a lot of people won't take action on their goals, and it's hard for them to comprehend because the mind will come up and make excuses like, oh, I'm not experienced enough, I'm not qualified enough, there's already too many other people out there doing it. Why would I be, how am I smart enough to do that? Why would anyone listen to me? Why would anyone want to work with me? Blah, 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 right? I work with lots of people who have those thoughts. All of those thoughts are basically the same thing in a different dress, right? In a different shape. And it's all manifested shame. It's all basically you trying desperately to avoid feeling shame, because if you did the thing and then you did it and you were so afraid that someone might think you're an idiot or someone might think you were pathetic or someone might think you weren't qualified enough, you would then have to experience shame. Okay? So most of us, the reason why emotional health is so important is because most of us are running from that. In relationships, most of us are running from fear. Most of us most men are running from their anger. Most men that are in relationships where, they've got no boundaries and they're, the nice guy in relationship, they're actually terrified of their anger. They're terrified of setting a healthy boundary. So when we think about those 4 emotions, it helps us to understand, okay, the thing that I want most in life that isn't really working, when I get more comfortable with feeling that feeling, when I allow myself to sit with and process that feeling in my body over and over and over, then all of a sudden my actions start to get closer and closer and closer and I get the thing that I want. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, 100%.
So the 4 emotions, while we're on that, anger is a result of one of 2 things. It's a result of boundaries being crossed or needs not being met. Super simple, right?
Very.
If anyone's ever angry, it's usually one of those 2 things. A boundary is being crossed for them or a need hasn't been met. Sadness is a result of too little connection, love, understanding, and support. So it's a lot of neglect, isolation, right? Fear comes from not enough stability, safety, and security.
Yep.
So for all the girls listening to this or the guys thinking that they have anxiety, let go of that. You don't have anxiety. You just don't know how to create safety in your body. You've actually lived with a lot of insecurity, instability, and insecurity, and unsafety.
Wow.
Yeah, that's all it is. When I teach you how to feel safe in your body, you won't have anxiety anymore. And then shame is an inherent feeling of being a little bit bad, a little bit broken, or not good enough. Okay? That's all that those things are. So when you actually start to understand, wow, I've believed I've had anxiety my whole life and that it's a chemical imbalance in the brain, but what if it is just that my childhood was, there was a lot of violence, or my mum was really anxious all the time? Or what if, there was a lot of arguing in the family? What if I moved homes every 6 months? That is a lack. Every human being needs stability, safety, and security in order to thrive. So when you take a look at your childhood, you'll quickly see the puzzle pieces and why you might actually be feeling the way that you're feeling.
Bang on. I want to get down to that. You speak quite a lot on how parents, rub off on you and how that affects you. I want to go into that a little bit later. Yep. First and foremost, I want to paint the picture to the audience and even myself. What led you on this journey of emotional intelligence and bettering yourself? What got you to the path you're going down today? Yeah,
my own pain. So, I'm 42. So I actually was in the fitness industry for a long time. So for nearly 10 years, I owned a couple of women's only gyms based here in the Hunter. And it was in the middle of the beginning of the pandemic where my 2 gyms were being closed overnight. You know, I thought I was going to go bankrupt. My partner that I was seeing at the time, and I thought we were going to get married and have kids, we broke up. I had to move out of our home and live by myself for the lockdown, which was 4 months. And, before that, I would say I was always very interested in self-development and doing a lot of this work on myself. But it was the positive surface level stuff. It was the surface level, trying to understand depression, anxiety, ADHD. And, I never really felt like any of it fully clicked. I just, I'd spent 10 years like going to a psychologist, psychotherapist, psychiatrist, counselor, life coach nearly every month. I tried a few different people and I just kept feeling so lost. And then I basically went through, have you ever heard of the term dark night of the soul?
No, I haven't, no.
Right. So dark night of the soul is like everyone goes through one in their life, I believe. It is where everything falls apart and it's a bit of a divine storm. Like it has to fall apart in order for everything to come back together better.
For you to redirect and go.
That's right.
Go where you're supposed to.
Yeah. So I did that in 2020. My business fell apart, my relationship, but it was the first time I really looked at myself and I really sat with myself and I was like, okay, Nerida, everything's falling apart. You're the common denominator here. Like what is it within you that you need to look at? And that's when I knew, that's the first time I really took radical responsibility for my life. Prior to that, I'd always been like, if I'd ever had a relationship breakdown, it was always they were the problem, they were this, they were emotionally unavailable, he was a narcissist, whatever. And then for the first time, I really took a long, hard look at myself and I realized I had a lot of trauma that I had not worked through.
What made you sit in the shit literally and go, it's me, like I need to, because I feel like a lot of people, they just keep going down that same path and then they never realize that they need to go within and, come out the other side.
This question, I find it so interesting because people ask me this all the time and I think, no one can ever pick when anyone else is on that journey. Like when you're ready to look at yourself, you just can't. It's like you're walking around with a mask on for a period of time. For you, it might have been 19 years. And you might have gone through yours earlier on. Some people die never having done it. But it's when you go through enough pain that you have to look at yourself. And if for most people, they just haven't gone through enough pain yet.
Yeah, wow.
But no one, I got people that I just want to shake and I'm like, come on. But you just can't. You can't make someone see what they can't see. And it's something that I've come up with, right? I get a lot of people that come to me and say, I'm going to pay you to work with my child, or I want my wife to work with you and I'm going to pay for it, right? And I always say no to that now because, at the end of the day, no amount of money can make you see what you're not ready to see, and no amount of not having the money can stop you when you're ready. When I went through that pandemic breakdown, like I had no money, but I was determined to look. Whereas 6 months prior, I remember very clearly thinking to myself, I had all the money in the world, like, my business was thriving. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I'm really not feeling good. Like I really need to look at this. And I was just like, nah, I'm not ready yet. Like, no, I didn't want to open Pandora's box. So it was only when everything fell apart that I was really determined. So when you get to that place, nothing can stop you when you're fully ready.
Bang, that's so powerful. I can relate heavily to that too. I think, you need to get to that stage of going through so much shit, so much pain. And then you kind of go, well, look within and then you start figuring out.
No one wants to do it without going through pain. Like no one wakes up and thinks to themselves, because what we're essentially talking about is our shadow.
Yeah.
It's your darker side. It's your ego. It's the things that you're doing that you're not even conscious of. It's your subconscious mind. So no one ever wants to wake up and go, let's go and figure that out today.
Yeah, of course.
It happens through a series of events, and those events might look different for you, to me, to your friends, to my friends. It's different for everyone. Everyone's got their own life path, their own journey. And what that looks like is, I have no idea, but I know mine up until this point, and that's how it played out for me.
And it turned out to be, I'm assuming, a great blessing.
The best thing that ever happened.
Yeah, of course.
The best thing that ever happened.
Yeah, oh, well, how good. I want to quickly touch upon, while we're on this topic, if someone's down in the dumps, they're in the trenches, they know they need it, something needs to change. Yep. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, look, first of all, that it's so normal that most people feel that way. No one ever talks about it. Most people walk around in this world feeling a little bit lonely, a little bit full of shame and suffering. Most people are. But what you see on the outside is people's masks. Everyone wears a mask. And, no human being on this planet is walking around without a mask, and it looks different for everyone. For some people, it's overachieving in business. Some people, it's achieving in sport. Some people, it's looking good. Some people, it's people-pleasing. Some people, it's being the funny one. Some people, it's being invisible. Some people, it's doing for others, like being the good girl, being the good guy, the nice guy. Everyone has a mask that they wear. And the sooner that you get to see how terrified people are of you seeing under their mask, the quicker you will start to understand how much shame they have. Because I'll tell you what, the people that push away emotional intelligence and emotions and the people that resist it the most are the ones that are the most lost and the most scared. Whereas the people who are open and okay to talk about it, they're the ones that have the least to hide.
100%. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Mental health now is a very important topic to myself. I've been very vocal about it in my young teenage years, and obviously up until now I'm a massive advocate for it. So I want to talk about that whole kind of idea and topic and where does emotional intelligence play in this whole mental health kind of epidemic we're kind of going through, I feel like, especially in Australia. So I'd be keen to hear your words and wisdom on this.
Well, there's a few things. There's understanding your emotions. So first of all, understanding those 4 key emotions that I spoke about earlier on, understanding your emotional home, understanding your lifestyle. Like, most people, I would say, spend too much time on a device. And the reason why, and I think the reason why we're going through such a huge mental health epidemic now with Gen Z and millennials is because what we don't understand is you guys have been introduced to a childhood where phones are a byproduct of being a kid, a teenager, an adult. Can I ask you, how old were you when you got your first phone?
13.
Okay. So what's happened is phones have replaced play. Okay. So when we think about what human beings need in order to thrive, in order to develop self-worth and a sense of feeling good about themselves, like good inside, we need a couple of things. We need to know that 2 people love us, adore us, and want to spend time with us and want to listen to us and want to play with us. Who do you think those 2 people are?
Normally your parents.
Exactly, mum and dad. We need to know that we can do things. We need to be able to go out into the world and test ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and know that we can make it through hard times. So we need to be outside playing, climbing, skipping, running, singing, dancing, building, falling down, breaking bones. Like, these are things that need to happen, right, in order for us to develop a sense of who we are. And what I really fear is happening is phones and technology and, gaming devices are in the moment creating a sense of you're engaged and you're engaged in activity, but you're not actually getting the outcome, whereas you're building your self-esteem on the other side of that. You're not actually getting that feeling, because what actually human beings need on this planet is what's called self-actualization. So that's a sense of, from the day that we're born till the day that we die, we have gone through a series of events and journeys and experiences that we look back on and that we're proud of and that we're happy about and that we feel fulfilled by. So, I would say a lot of parents have hidden their children from adversarial, sort of opportunities. So we went from kind of in the 90s, we went from kids playing outside, riding their bikes down the street, getting lost until dark and then just returning home, to us parents thinking the outside world is really dangerous, putting kids online. Whereas actually it's the opposite. The outside world has never been safer than ever. It's never been safer. And the online world has never been more dangerous. So we have to really recognize that, right? Like, you guys have, I feel like I'm the last generation that got through my childhood without phones. I was 20, 22, 23 when I got a phone. And I shudder to think what would have happened to me because I was so unwell. And the scary stuff that's coming out now from Doc Amen is he's saying now that for every hour a teenager is on a phone, their suicide ideation goes up by 10%.
That's crazy.
10%. So we have to really start looking at our lifestyle. We have to start looking at how much time are we spending outside in the sun, because it's a nutrient. It's nourishing to us. How much time in connection are we getting? Like how much time are we getting off our phones, talking to people face to face, laughing, making eye contact? One thing, I will say this about you. I wouldn't say you fall into this category, but I would say when it comes to the younger generation, I do notice kids struggling to make eye contact. And it makes sense, right? Because they've been raised on these phones.
Yeah.
So what you guys have not had the opportunity to do is to go out into the real world, shake hands, look people in the eye, use your hands, figure out what the world's like without this device, which is an experience blocker. This device that you have in front of you is literally blocking your experience every single day. And I will die on this hill every day of the week. So I think that needs to change. I think we need to start encouraging kids to understand their emotions and stop talking about mental health and start talking about emotional health. Mental is thinking, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing that you don't need to do when you have poor mental health is think more.
Yeah,
you actually need to feel.
Yeah,
Emotion is feeling.
Yeah.
So I feel like that whole phrase is so backwards.
Yeah.
I hate hearing that term mental health.
Put it in the bin.
Throw it in the bin,
Yeah.
talk it and call it what it is.
Yeah.
It's emotional health and well-being.
Yeah.
And we all have it. It's not like he has mental health and she doesn't. We all have emotional health.
Of course. Just quickly, 3 things for someone to, 3 daily practices you would probably recommend for someone to better their EI, emotional intelligence.
Totally. Yep. So first thing is get yourself an emotion wheel. Go online, go into Google, search emotion wheel, and it will come. You'll see images of a wheel of emotions and start to identify and label what it is you're actually feeling. So every single day, check in with that and ask yourself, what are 2 or 3 emotions that I'm feeling today? I'm feeling a little bit angry. I'm feeling a little bit frustrated. I'm feeling a little bit sad and a little bit lost. Cool. Let's just start practicing that skill of being able to label exactly what it is that you feel, okay?
So what will that do just quickly for the listeners? Like how will that help them?
Well, we can't intervene in a world that we don't understand. So how are you going to work through this mental health just by talking about depression and anxiety and ADHD if you don't actually understand depression is sadness and loneliness, anxiety is fear and insecurity and instability, ADHD is years and years and years of built up anger and suppression. So we can't change these things if we don't actually understand what they mean. So, and then when you start to go, okay, well, now I'm seeing that I've got depression and there's a lot of sadness and loneliness, neglect there. Okay, what's the opposite of that I need to give to myself? I need connection. I need community. I need to move. I need to release. Great. Let's go about making those things happen for you. So we can't actually intervene and change anything if we don't fully understand it. And that's what I fear with this whole mental health pandemic is that we're not actually talking about, it's a surface sort of smoke screen for what's going on underneath. Most young people today that I speak with are feeling massive amounts of fear, massive amounts of loneliness, and massive amounts of shame. That's it. That's the majority of what our kids experience. So we need to learn how to help them move through that shame, fear, and loneliness and move through to high levels of self-worth, confidence, courage, connection, community, and allowing them to make mistakes, allowing them to fall short, allowing them to go in and apply for a job and to be told no and to feel that shame, allowing them to launch that business, because if we don't start doing this, we're going to see these, rates of suicide skyrocket even more so. So the first thing, the emotion wheel helps you to build emotional attunement. And then the second thing is learn how to release those emotions.
Right.
Learn how to actually let yourself feel. Emotion is just energy in motion. And if you allow yourself to fully experience an emotion without any judgment or suppression, it will only last 90 seconds.
Yeah, wow.
And then it's gone. But the reason why people feel a little bit shit all the time is because they're pushing it down. They're not actually fully feeling it. Okay?
So how do we fully feel our emotions?
Yep. So with shame, sit and find something to ground yourself, and it will feel like, if you think about, do you remember a time where you've experienced shame?
Yeah.
Did it feel like a flash of fire, like heat for you? What did it feel like?
I get real heavy and just Debbie Downer, like down in the dumps. Like.
Yeah, but where do you feel it in your body?
In my chest.
Yeah, great. So a heaviness in the chest.
Yeah.
Great. What else?
Oh, it's good because I haven't felt that in a while. So that's a good thing. So I can't even really remember.
That means you've been working through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That all I just remember is being so like when I was down in the dumps, just so heavy, heavy.
Yeah,
It's like I
beautiful.
was carrying shackles around.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, great. Okay, so with shame, I like to get into nature or just even stand still and find something to focus your attention on and breathe for 90 seconds. Breathe in and breathe out. And I like to hold my hand on my heart and just to allow that flash of whatever it is to move through you and out of you without trying to push it down, just letting it be there. So it's really important to understand a sensation is different to an emotion, okay? So sensation, how I experience shame is I feel fire. It's like a flash of fire and I literally feel it from my feet, go through my body and I feel it in my chest and in my face. And I'll tell you about a time that I really felt shame. I remember this time I was on a holiday with some friends and we'd been staying in this Airbnb in this car and Airbnb and we're driving this car in and out underneath this car park and I was sitting in the back seat. And every time we'd have to go out, I would have to jump out and press the button for the door to open and get out. And this one particular time we were coming out, I didn't put my seatbelt on, car was coming in, so we didn't need to. So we got out on the road, we're driving along the highway and I didn't put my seatbelt on because I just forgot. And someone turned around and saw that I didn't have my seatbelt on. Now, what happens to a driver if you don't have your seatbelt on?
They lose like points or get a fine, they lose their license.
That's right.
Yeah.
So my girlfriend who was driving went into a huge spiral because I was not wearing my seatbelt. Now, this girl had just gotten a new job, new car, hardly had any points. So she was freaking out, right? Every right. Every right to. So what do you think I experienced in that moment?
Shame.
Massive shame.
Yeah.
I've got 4 of my best friends in the car. I haven't put my seatbelt on. I'm a bad person, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Now, in the past, I would have reacted to that. I would have shot back and I would have, gone into a fight. I would have gotten aggressive because that's what kept me safe in childhood, right? But that's also what's kept me, that's what's harmed every single relationship I've ever had. It's what's broken down every friendship I've ever had. It's what's ruined every relationship I've ever had because I wasn't able to allow myself to experience shame and let it move through you before I reacted. So in this moment, literally 2 years ago at the age of 40, this is how old I am when I'm like actually learning how to feel my shame. I'm sitting, I notice her saying all this stuff to me and I notice myself feeling all this shame and all I wanted to do was yell, but I just kept breathing.
You sat with it.
And then I did. And then I looked out the window, I wound down the window and we were driving and there were trees and I just let the wind on my face. I closed my eyes and, I just said to myself, I said, Nerida, you made a mistake. You're not a bad person. You made a mistake. You're not a bad person. I'm just saying this to myself in my head.
Yep.
And 90 seconds felt like forever, right?
Yeah,
felt like
of course,
so
of
long.
course, yeah.
And I'm just saying to myself over and over, I'm not reaffirming the shame. I'm reaffirming the truth. And the truth is I made a mistake. I'm not a bad person.
Yeah.
So to anyone listening to this right now, I want you to just know this. There is nothing wrong about you. There is nothing broken. You may have made mistakes, but that's a part of being a human being. We all do. And you have to learn how to talk to yourself in those moments and hold yourself to get back to safety. And so in that moment, it was really beautiful because, I remember sitting there feeling all of this and I felt very alone. I felt very alone. Everyone went quiet. And then, after I did this for like a minute or two, my friend next to me who was sitting next to me reached over and put her hand on top of mine and gave me a squeeze.
Oh, wow.
And it was just that moment of like, yes, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we got out of the car and I apologized. I said, I'm so sorry I did that. That was a mistake. And it was over.
Yeah.
But in the past, that would have been a completely different situation. And so you may not get so much shame when in that situation, but think about the other situations, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to shame, you have to learn how to feel the heaviness, the fire, the flash, the tightness in the throat, the tightness in the chest, in the belly. Sometimes people get this sick feeling in their stomach. Whatever it is, you've got to learn how to allow that sensation to move through your body for 90 seconds before you speak. Do not speak.
Just feel it. Just feel.
And you've got to be your own best friend in that moment. You can't if I'd sat there and said to myself, you fucking idiot, Nerida, I can't believe you didn't put your seatbelt on. You're such an idiot. Oh my God, you're so lame. These girls aren't going to want to be friends with you anymore. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I'm just reaffirming the shame. So I need to be the one. And I'll say this, right? And no one ever really gets this, but too often we look for someone else to bring us what we're unwilling to bring ourselves. So in that moment, I really wanted someone else to say to me, you're not a bad person, Nez. You just made a mistake. It's all good. But I have to be the one to be able to do it for myself first.
Why are we like that? Why do we do that?
Because we didn't have a parent do it for us as a kid. If we have our internal voice is exactly our parents' internal voice, okay?
Yeah.
So if when we were young, we had parents speaking to us that way, hey, I see you made a mistake there. That's okay. That's part of being a human, mate. You're a good kid. I love you. If we had a parent doing that for us over and over and over again when we were little, we will think that when we're adults. But for those of us who experience a lot of shame, a lot of fear, depression, sadness, anxiety, we didn't have that parent, okay? We had parents yelling at us. We had parents telling us not to be angry. We had parents telling us not to be sad. We had parents, removing themselves whenever we felt an emotion. What you have to understand is as a child, we have two systems, right? We have an attachment system and we have a defense system. So our attachment system is seeking safety, love, connection, and understanding. It's wired for that, okay? Our defense system is what we bring on when we want to say no or when we're angry, we're upset, we're sad, we're fearful, we're hurt. Now, if when we bring on our defense system, attachment is taken away, what do you think we learn how to do very quickly? Push that down. So what that looks like is, say, for instance, when you were young and you were like 3 or 4, you're a boy, say, for instance, something happened and you were angry. Your little brother stole one of your toys and broke it and you got angry, right? Now, you have every right to be angry at that, okay? You're 4 years old. You're just trying to process and work through that emotion. Now, if your mother or father in that moment told you, don't be angry, he's only 2, he doesn't know any better. I'll go to your room. Don't be so angry. You will learn when I bring on this part of myself, this is bad, I'm not lovable, so I'm going to learn to push this down because love is more important to me than anything else. So then when you get into a relationship and your partner, and she does something that you're upset about or angry about, you're going to feel it, but you're not going to want to say anything because you're not going to want to threaten the attachment. You've learned from years and years and years, when I express my anger, love is taken away. So I'm going to learn how to push that right down.
Wow.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
That's exactly what I see so many men struggling with.
Yeah.
The inability, because if you couldn't be angry at your mum and she hold it for you and say, hey, that makes so much sense. Even if you're angry at her. Just 2 weeks ago, I took my nephew, he's 10, right?
Yeah.
And so he's starting to get that little bit older, and we went to Grilled and got some burgers. And he likes a certain burger and a certain way of making it.
Yeah.
And in the past, they've done it and they've gotten it wrong. So I made a point of saying to her, he's very picky. If you don't do this right, he won't eat it. And he heard me say that he was picky and he got really embarrassed about that, which makes sense. I could have said that in a different way. I could have said, hey, we need to make sure we get this right because he won't eat it otherwise. I didn't have to label him as really picky.
Yeah.
So that was something for me to work on.
Yeah.
And straight away, I could tell he was angry at me. And then we got down to sit down and I had no idea why. He said, you told her that I was picky. You embarrassed me.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I didn't intentionally embarrass him. I didn't even think she would have thought twice about it. I could have easily turned around and said to him, I didn't embarrass you. It's all good. Don't worry about it. You shouldn't be angry about that. That's not a big deal. But I'm trying to teach him that it's okay for him to be angry at me. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I totally get that. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said that. I could have said it this way instead.
Yeah.
You have every right to be angry at me. I shouldn't have embarrassed you like that. That makes sense. So mothers, we have to be able to tolerate our kids' disappointment, hurt, frustration, anger, sadness, especially when it's directed at us.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because that's what's going to model your relationship with a woman later on in life.
For sure. That was the second one. So we spoke there. A lot of great little golden nuggets in there. So the first one was that word where we were talking about the 3 how to improve emotional intelligence.
Yep.
So the first one was the word, what was the thing you search up? The word
emotion wheel.
Emotion wheel. The second one is to
learn
feel.
how to feel the emotion. So shame sitting and just processing. Sadness is let the tears flow.
Yep.
Sit down, let yourself have a really good cry.
Yep.
Anger is primal movement. So jumping, shaking, growling, screaming, going for a run, like you have to get that anger out in a very primal way. Like it's a like, you've got to get it out.
Yeah.
You know, boxing, jiu-jitsu, like all of those things are so good for getting anger out. So you need to get it out that way. Even punching a pillow, screaming into a pillow.
Yeah.
90 seconds as well.
Yeah.
And really fully give it everything you've got.
Yeah.
And then fear is breath. It's managing the breath.
work.
So I would put on a breath work track and I would do some breath work. I would elongate the breath in, elongate the breath out. You do that for 2 minutes, you'll feel completely different.
100%.
If you actually sit and freaking breathe. But most people don't. Most people pick up their phone and just scroll Instagram.
Yeah, cheap dopamine hits,
Yeah, so most people, we're so distracted and so disconnected, our heart and our bodies, we actually have to create space for us to reconnect again.
Of course. And what was the third? Like, what's the third way
I would say the best thing you could ever do, especially as a young person, is to get into a community. Get into a community of people who are doing this work. So whether you join a mentorship or you go down to Talk to Me Bro, or you go down to a breathwork session down at the beach, or you go and join a yoga class.
Run clubs.
Yeah, run clubs. Oh my God. Like honestly, these young people.
It's kind of good to see, hey.
It's incredible. Like I started my business like La Somme 10 years ago, women's only gym, or 12 years ago now. And back then, no one was doing stuff like that. Now you can go down Merriweather Beach. You can walk down the beach and there are like 4 or 5 run clubs all started by young people. Like it's incredible. But join a community. But and I do also say a community where there are people of different ages really helps, because you need to be around. I really think human beings thrive when we're around people that are older than us who can share their wisdom with us, but also where we're older than some people and we can share our wisdom with them. When we're all on this ladder and we're all climbing and some people are pulling us up and sometimes we're reaching down and pulling other people up, we all get to make it. But if you're in a community where it's just all people your age, that's going to be fun, but chances are you're not going to grow as much.
Yeah, for sure.
So get into a community where you are actively being put into spaces with, different people of different ages. Go to a retreat, go and do a mentorship. Like there's, the emotional intelligence and personal development space is $1 trillion industry. There are coaches everywhere that can help you, that want to. The sooner you start getting some support, the better.
Yeah, of course. I like that analogy you said of the pulling people up the ladder. One of my mentors taught me that with business.
Yeah.
So surround yourself with like if you're breaking it into 33%, so you kind of want to sit in the middle, and then you want people above you, or 33% of your network above you, helping you climb, and then you want to pull people up below you 33%.
Totally.
So I like that analogy. I've always thought of it as business, but it makes so much sense as your environment, your community, who you surround yourself with. So that's really cool. Like you said that.
Yeah.
I want to quickly ask, do people naturally just have emotional intelligence? And if so, why? Like what makes them different to be more in tune than others?
I think we're all born emotionally intelligent. So when you look at little children, they naturally have a pretty good relationship with their emotions. If they're sad, they cry. If they're angry, they scream. If they're scared, they'll seek support. So children essentially are pretty good at expressing their emotions. And as a child, we're born onto the planet feeling fully whole, worthy, and loved. And it's as we progress through being parented and we go to school and we have all these experiences in the world where we start to then, that experience becomes disjointed. We hear someone say something to us, or someone does something, or something happens, and then all of a sudden we start to question our worth. What we have to understand is children use, when children can't understand something, they use self-blame in order to self-soothe. So say, for instance, my father was an alcoholic, right? Now, when he treated me badly, now as a 42-year-old woman, I can look at him and go, right, he was sent to boarding school at a really young age. He was disconnected from his parents. He had a really tough childhood. So it makes so much, and he drank to numb that pain. But when I was little and he did that, I couldn't comprehend that. So what I did was, when he was unavailable to connect with me, I told myself, well, it must be me. I must be bad. I must be broken if he doesn't love me. So that's the first thing we need to understand. As children, we self-blame in order to self-soothe. Okay, so I really do believe that we're all born whole, worthy, and intelligent, but it's through the process of life that gets taken away. And then as we move through later, we give it back to ourselves.
Trying to get it back, yeah.
And I really look at this journey as it's not about improving or becoming better. It's actually about letting go of all the lies that you believed that told you weren't. It's actually more of a, I went to this beautiful retreat and our mentor gave us this penny, and over time this penny picks up like dirt and blemishes and it gets really rusty, but you have to continually polish it. And that's what I think we need to do. We just need to polish ourselves and find the truth of who we really are. It's not like we have to get something or do something outside of ourselves. It's letting go of all the beliefs that we have that tell us that we're not.
Yeah, wow. While we're on this kind of topic, I love that analogy too. So how obviously you've spoken about it, but I want to touch upon it in a deeper sense. So obviously our parents play a huge role in our ideologies, how we treat ourselves, our subconscious thoughts, X, Y, Z. How do we reinvent ourselves as adults to break away from those analogies or thoughts we've been given when we were kids?
Yeah, really good question, and it's hard. You have to understand your first 7 years is like a computer program. So it's called your emotional home. So the emotions that you experience most from 0 to 7 is your emotional home. It's like your emotional addiction. It's just you're gonna have practiced it over and over and over. Now, if those things were mostly like love and laughter and play and fun and adventure and stuff like that, great. You're gonna have an amazing adulthood. But if it's not, you're going to have to learn how to work through that. So most of us, our emotional home is formed via the unresolved emotions through our parents, okay? So if you were raised, let's just say, so tell me now, what are the sort of 3 or 4 emotions that you notice yourself feeling when you were most stuck in your life? What were the 3 or 4 emotions you felt most?
Shame, sadness, and then like just overthinking quite a lot. Like I don't know what that would kind of fear. That would fall under.
Great. Awesome.
So, yeah.
Now, and were you raised by mum and dad?
Yeah.
Now, who has unresolved shame? So who is so afraid to be seen as a bad person? Or who told you needed to be a certain way?
I mean, they're both pretty good. I've never really looked into that deep. I mean, probably both at some stages. Sorry, mum and dad, if you're watching or listening.
So the first thing I want to do is this isn't about blaming anyone. A lot of people really struggle. It's like, we don't want to make our parents wrong.
Feel like look bad.
It's not about that, right? Our parents can have, like, think about this. I can love someone and leave them feeling unloved by me. We all do this, right? Sometimes we're just human beings, so they can have loved you and also maybe there were some needs that went unmet. Okay, let's just allow those 2 things to be true. So shame comes from essentially feeling bad or not good enough, not worthy, right? So what did you feel like when you think your shame sounds like a lot of self-doubt, so that's also tied into a lot of fear. So which parent modeled more fear?
I'd probably say mum.
Okay, perfect. Most women do.
Sorry, mum.
Most women have a huge amount of fear. So when you were going out and doing things, was she always like, be careful, don't get hurt, don't,
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So what she didn't model maybe was, a level of like independence and you can go out into the world and I'll be here to catch you when you fall and then things might happen to you and that's okay. I'm going to know that that's a part of your development. But when parents cotton wool their kids and they don't allow them to be independent at all, what happens is we create codependence, right? So we create this, can I ask you, what was your mum's childhood like?
So yeah, she was one of 8. Her dad or grandpa was from Germany, so a migrant. Moved quite a lot. Lost a brother when she was 16. So pretty
lot of pain.
Lot of pain, and they weren't well off at all.
Yeah,
so
great.
And she was one of the oldest, so she was kind of like looking after a lot of the younger ones. So
this makes so much sense. So she had a lot of pain in her childhood. And do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I've got an older sister.
Okay, so when she had her 2 beautiful little kids, all she wanted to do was protect them from that pain.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Which is so beautiful, right? And also damaging. Now, what happens is when we have pain, right, and we do not integrate it, we don't understand it, we don't work through it, what we can often do is we go so far to the opposite side of the pendulum. So let me give you an example. You know, when a mother experiences a lot of pain in her life and a lot of neglect and maybe not a lot of love and connection, she might go, I'm going to have these babies and I'm going to give them all the love, all the connection, all the support. They are never going to feel sad or lonely. But what happens is they go too far the other side and they end up being suffocating, and they end up teaching you the world is a scary place. You can't trust anyone. You need to stay safe. So that doesn't foster any independence. That's codependence. We've got independence over here, which is not enough support, not enough supervision. That was my childhood. What we actually need to find is interdependence, which is I love you and I support you and we're always here. And I'm going to allow you to go out into the world and develop your independence so that you become a mature adult, like a mature man who feels confident and strong in the world.
Yep.
Right? So I see a lot of mothers do this.
Yeah.
They go over the top in trying to protect their kids.
Yeah.
And then their kids are too dependent on them and too afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well done.
Oh,
that makes sense now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah.
It makes sense that you feel so much fear when that's really her fear. So that's her unresolved emotion being passed on down to you.
So how does myself, for instance, we'll just use me as an analogy, how selfish of me, but so how does, what I want to say is like, how do you break away from your parents, you know?
Yeah, well, you already have in a way.
Yeah, I
want you to think
so,
about, you already have because you're recognizing it.
Yeah.
You're having these conversations, you're doing this work, you are already on that path.
So,
but what I want you to do is, this is the scary bit because you don't want to do the same as what they did and go so far like, I don't want any of that. I don't want that childhood. I want to be all the way over here. For every negative experience, there always is a positive outcome.
Of course.
So for me, my childhood was quite traumatic, but I had so many positives come from that because that made me go into the self-development world, you know, and understand myself on a deeper level than most people ever do. I created, you know, women's only gyms that were all about love and connection and belonging because I experienced so much rejection and like suffering in my childhood. So for every negative, there is a positive outcome. So even though you had the childhood that you experienced where maybe you experienced a bit of disconnect, a bit of loneliness, a little bit of sadness and a little bit of shame and fear, there's been positive outcome because you're doing this work and you're helping others. And you're going to have a much bigger level of conscious awareness than she ever would or you ever would have without that childhood. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
So you have to trust in going, I'm already on that path. All you have to do is now build your relationship with yourself, which is the way that you think about yourself, the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you feel. And you need to work on that every single day to become your inner coach, not your inner critic. Because at the end of the day, I can send you to all the retreats, all the coaching, all the, you know, ayahuasca, breath work, whatever. But if you don't learn how to talk to yourself more kindly, nothing will ever change.
Yeah, nothing matters.
At the end of the day, who's alone with you when your head hits the pillow at night? You.
Yeah, of course.
When you wake up in the morning and and your mind becomes aware of thought, who is that? It's you. So if you don't learn how to change that over and over and over again, nothing will ever fully change. So at the end of the day, you can do that. So for me, a lot of my thoughts, like for me, career has never been a big, like it's never been a fear. I've always just had a feeling of self-worth. But my block comes in relationship. Because my father always made me feel unlovable, I have this deep wound around feeling loved by men. So some of my beliefs can be things like I'm never going to find someone, I'm too old, I'm not worthy of love, I'm broken. So whenever those thoughts come up, I have to grab it and I have to say, Nerida, you're worthy of love just like any other human being on the planet is. Nerida, you're not too old. Love can happen at any age. Nerida, you have to trust that everything's unfolding as it's meant to. So every time I notice that thought, I have to grab it and flip it, grab it and flip it. And what I want you to think about is, right, most people are in self-loathing and we need to go to self-loving, but that's a long way. Let's just go to neutrality, acceptance in the middle. Find that first. Because if I said to myself, you know, something that didn't feel fully like okay, I wouldn't believe it. So if you're in self-loathing and self-doubt, find something that's just acceptance to work to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, no, that paints a picture. That's some awesome advice. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So the last kind of section I want to talk about is relationships and dating and stuff like that.
Love this.
It's funny because me and my friends, we have a joke quite often. I've never been on a date, nor I've never been in a relationship. So it's kind of a funny, inside joke. But when I was writing this script, it got me thinking about emotional intelligence in dating and also relationships. So I'd love to hear your kind of gist around that. So
yeah. Okay. So how spiritual can I go?
Well,
how deep?
I'm pretty spiritual.
Okay.
So I'm open to it.
Okay. So most people seek love and connection from another human being to fill the void that they feel within themselves.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so what happens is we grow up with a little bit with a bit of a void within us, and we just think to ourselves, when I meet that person, it'll all just feel better. When I meet that person, my pain will go away. And we meet that person, and at first it does, because we fall in love and this person's kissing us and telling us how beautiful we are, how handsome we are, how much they love us. And all those same endorphins and chemicals and hormones are being, moved around in the body, the same that were pumped through your body when your mum was looking down on you, when you were in her arms and she was kissing you and telling you she loved you. Though that same feeling. So it's like coming home, right? But then what happens is after either 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, that newness and that endorphin starts to drop, okay? And then what starts to happen is the person that you truly are, that you've always been, that lonely, sad, full of shame person starts to pop back up. And then what happens, where most people go wrong, is when all those old feelings start to pop back up, they start to feel that same way again. They start to look at this person in front of them, the person they're in a relationship with, and think, I'm starting to feel yuck, it must be you.
Yeah.
When actually this is who I've always been.
Yeah.
And so the work is in not thinking anyone is responsible for how you feel. You are responsible for how you feel. And you are to meet someone who mirrors that and complements that, but where your dependence isn't on them making you feel better. So most people go wrong. Like, I want to ask you, have you ever bought a new car before?
Yeah.
So when you bought the new car, how good did that feel?
Yeah, it feels good for like a week, and then
Exactly.
and then you just want the next thing. Like it's most like, that's why I'm not really materialistic, because you get that thing, and you think it's going to fill that void, but really it doesn't. Like it's shiny and new for like a week, but then you want that next thing.
Yeah.
So that's
but also the car just feels like another car then, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course.
So people are the same.
Yeah, okay.
Like your focus our focus in our life, right, is either on the thing that's causing us pain or the thing that's causing us pleasure. So the more that something outside of you causes you pleasure, the more you'll be focused on that. So, when people say, oh, I just can't stop thinking about that person, or he can't stop thinking about me, that's actually because they're focusing on you because you are feeling a void within them. But guess what? When that void, when that void starts to go away and that pleasure starts to diminish and that old pain comes up, like you were responsible for the pleasure, you'll also be responsible for the pain. So that's not someone you want to be. That's not a good thing. Okay. So, there's so many people go into relationships and don't notice things in the beginning of the relationship and then later want to change the person. You have to go into dating fully knowing what people are saying to you and knowing what you're saying to them. What are the things that they're hiding? What are the ways that they're not emotionally open or available to you? And how are you not available to them? So relationships are essentially not about making you happy, but helping you to understand more about who you really are. And it's hard because most people don't want to hear that. Most people just want to, the best advice I've ever heard from Dr. Joe Dispenza was, think about everything you want in a partner, go out and become it. Write all those things down and go out and become that person, because you will always attract a partner that is at the same level as you. You always will. It's just, it never works out any other way. I work with a lot of women who say, he's a narcissist. Well, you're a people pleaser, so you're a perfect match, right? Someone who's self-focused must end up with someone who's other-focused, right? People say he's not emotionally available. Well, I ask you, do you feel, what about your emotions? Do you actually know how to check in with yourself and say, oh, I'm feeling a bit of sadness. Oh, no, I don't, because I feel like I would be a burden on someone. Yeah, well, you're actually not available either. So here you are, again, looking for someone else to bring you something you're unwilling to bring yourself. If you're looking for someone else to validate you and listen to you, you need to actually validate and listen to yourself. If you're looking for someone else to tell you you're beautiful or handsome, you need to be the first one to start doing that for yourself. If you want someone to create, buy a home and for you to feel safe and secure, you go out and buy a home and feel safe and secure. Because when you go first and you commit to being that person, you will end up attracting the most incredible person that will amplify your life, not diminish it.
Bang. Ooh, just hit the.
And I know you'll end up being one of those guys. Like I think it's great that you haven't had any partners.
Yeah.
You're doing all this work on yourself. I guarantee you one day, and it's really hard. I remember someone saying this to me when I was younger. The nice guys don't get noticed when you're younger, but it's like later in life. And I've actually experienced that myself.
Yeah.
I've remembered.
Nice guys finish last.
Yeah, no. And it's not to say I want you to be a nice guy. I want you to be a healthy male.
Yeah, of course.
A healthy masculine male.
Yeah.
Who can be loving and supportive and understanding and listen, but also can say no, also can honor what you need, also can advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
And also has high self-worth within.
Yeah, of course.
You're not dependent on someone else to make you feel good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love that. Great relationship advice.
Oh, good.
My biggest thing is like I'm just tunnel vision right now with like my business and what I'm doing and stuff. And I kind of feel like, if I did like get in it's probably narrow-minded and stuff, and probably this conversation today might change that, but I kind of feel like it'd be selfish of me in a way to get in a relationship with a really nice person if I am so tunnel vision, because then I'm not really, compensating for them as well. Like I'm not showing like up for them. So I feel like, the scales or the that currency of energy will be kind of off, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. But I think you're coming from a place of scarcity.
Yeah.
Okay. So why can't you have it all?
Yeah.
Why
true,
can't you have
true.
an incredible business
and
be working towards your goals and have someone who supports that?
Yeah.
Someone who you love, someone who loves you, who admires and adores you, who supports you, who emotionally like you feel connected to at the end of the day when you go home.
Yeah.
Why do you think it needs to be one or the other?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true.
That's a fear, scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
So what I want to invite you to do is let go. Like most people are either this work simply is broken down into two things. Most people are either coming from a place of love or fear. That's it. So when you reached out to me to say, hey, can you come and do this podcast? Where were you coming from?
Just having a genuine conversation.
Love or fear?
Well, love. Because I love your work.
Yeah, you were coming from love.
Yeah.
And that's why I responded and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
But if you had not reached out because you're in so much fear, what would have happened? This conversation would never have happened.
Yeah, of course.
But how can this also translate to your personal life?
You just, I guess I say this like quite often, like you never know. Like,
exactly.
Unless you try, you'd never know.
But what I mean is go back to that statement where you're like, I'm not open to a relationship because I've got this tunnel vision, but you're coming from a place of fear there.
Yeah, true.
Whereas what if you were coming from a place of love like I'm on this journey and I want to I'm so committed, I'm so excited, but I'm also really open to meeting someone along the way who might, but I'm not going to just look for someone just for the sake of being with someone.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold myself to the high standard and become the best man I can be. And I trust that eventually I'll meet that right partner, whether it's in the next 12 months or 10 years, I don't know, but I'm open to that and I'm excited for it.
That's great language. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me that.
Look at the way you're wording things because your words create your world every day of the week.
Period. Yeah, that's so true. Thank you. That means a lot. That definitely opened my mind to stop thinking so narrowly.
Limited.
Limited. Yeah, that's the word.
I encourage you to do this one practice. Go home and with a piece of paper, write down your ideal life, without any limitation, where you want to live, how you want your day to look, how much travel you do, how when you get up and exercise, like what your body looks like, what your relationships look like, what your business looks like, the amount of money coming in, all of it. Write that down and write it down and revisit it every few days. Like every day, just bring your focus and attention to it because we are so powerful. Like we have no idea how powerful we are.
Yeah, we truly are. And our mind is.
We actually are. So, but get as crazy and out there as you can and just always bring your attention to it. Because you're already doing this, but you're doing it from a place of scarcity.
Yeah.
So change it to a place of abundance, love, trust, openness, excitement. And then watch your life unfold over the next 20 years from that place.
What holds you back?
My fear, like my own bullshit, the lies that I tell myself, the things that I believe about myself that aren't true, the ways that I believe that I'm separate to everyone else. Isn't it ridiculous that we sit there I'm very spiritual. I'm a Christian, and I believe that we're all children of God. Like, we're all worthy. We're all made in his eye, and he loves every single one of us. But sometimes I have a really beautiful way of, or not beautiful, I have a sneaky way of separating myself from that. I see everyone else as worthy and lovable and whole and amazing, but sometimes I forget that about myself. And, the things that, hold me back is trusting myself when I'm down, like when I'm in a dark place, and making decisions from that place. I don't do that anymore. I struggled with suicide ideation for a long time. And I did lots of things now that I look back on. And what I want to say to people, anyone here listening from that place, is suicide ideation, because I actually felt a lot of shame about that, because I had, I really took steps to take my life at a point where on the outside, my life never looked better. I was super fit. I had a partner that adored me. We had a home together. My business was thriving. I had all these friends and family that loved me. Like, I literally could not, if I'd taken my life, people would have been so confused. But there was this feeling inside of shame that I had not healed. And the thing is, suicide ideation is not about you not wanting to be here. It's about you wanting your pain to end.
Yeah.
Very different things. So when I learnt that, okay, well, my pain isn't going to end until I learn how to hold my pain, until I learn to be able to be a vessel that I can feel it all without judgment, without shame, without criticism, and I can let myself feel it and release it, and be in containers and communities where I can do that. And making decisions from that place I don't do anymore. When I'm having a bad day or a bad week, I let myself rest. And I treat myself with all the love and compassion that I would a sick child. If I had my niece or nephew home from school one day and they were really sick, I would put them on the lounge, I'd wrap them up with a blanket, I would bring them soup, I would rub their forehead, I would tell them how much I love them, I'd put a movie on that they loved, and I would just say, rest, you're loved, you're here, you're safe. And the trick is, can we do that for ourselves when we're going through a hard time? When we're going through that dark tunnel, and that we think that there's no light and no one understands us and that we're so alone, that's actually not true. We are so loved and we are so supported, but we just need to learn how to hold ourselves through that.
So powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
That's really, really, really powerful. I like this next question because it's different, I believe, for everybody. What does success mean and look like to you?
Success to me looks like living my life every day from a place of enjoyment, like waking up and being excited about what's on my calendar.
Yeah.
It's about having freedom to do what I want, be with who I want, and go where I want, and, spend the money that I want. It looks like feeling good about who I am, like liking myself and living in alignment with my core values. For 5 years ago, we went through the pandemic, and, I was very concerned about, that my business in that time, and I was very outspoken about some of the rules that they were placing on gyms and businesses at that time.
Yeah.
And, October 11, 2021, I'll never forget it. The government, 2 or 3 weeks prior had said, we were in that second lockdown in New South Wales, and they had said, you can reopen your business, but only to vaccinated people. And one of my core values when I had the gym was community, courage, and excellence. And that was one of the hardest chapters in my life, because I either had to make a decision to open up my business and turn away people who were not vaccinated, let people in that were, tell the people that were not vaccinated, go down the street and train, in the park, or I could hold the closure and wait until everyone could come back together as a community. Now, I made that decision, and a lot of people argued that decision, saying if I was really about community, I would have told everyone to go and get vaccinated. And, I said to my staff at the time, I said, I would rather close this business down and walk away than ever split this community up. I just was never going to do it. And that killed my business. I lost 80% of my business overnight. But do you know what? I look back on that time and I lived in my values even when everyone was against me. Like, I had everyone against me. No one at that time could understand why that was such a radical thing. But I can sleep at night knowing I made that decision.
You stayed true to your core values.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, you don't know what your core values are until you test it. So all these people say, these are my values. Well, no, not really. You don't know them until you're actually tested on them. So for me, living in my core values and living in authenticity. You know, that's why I said to you at the beginning of this podcast, I'm an open book. You can ask me anything. There's nothing like I've done plenty of things that I regret, that I'm shameful about. You know, there's plenty in my life that I've gotten wrong, plenty. And that's okay. I'm a human being.
Yeah.
We all experience that. I'm never going to get on here and try to tell you that I'm perfect or I've got it all figured out because I'm just winging it just like you are and just like everyone else is.
Yeah.
You know, even the most successful people, the more successful I become, the more I realize we're all doing that.
Yeah.
There is no difference between you and, you know, Stephen Bartlett. Like you're both just figuring it out. Like literally there's not. You're just 20 years behind him.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, if I can even get to 1% of what he's done, that would be crazy one day.
But you don't realize he's just winging it just like you.
Yeah, of course.
He's just got 10, 15 years experience in front of you.
Yeah.
But, you know, there is no difference. The only difference is time. So we're all just winging it. Take people off the pedestals that you have them on. If you've got me on a pedestal, take me right off because I will disappoint you. And that's a part of being human. So let's just be real about this experience and just show up every day, do our best, own our mistakes, try again. Life is not finite, you know?
Well said. You in one word. This always throws people off.
Oh, it's a tough one.
And then I want you to like elaborate on why you chose that word.
I think right now it would be service.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I'm just in a chapter where I want to be of service to people. And, you know, whether that's smiling at someone who's having a bad day in the supermarket, who I can feel their energy and they're stressed, and for me to just give them a really nice smile could relax them a little bit, or whether it's coaching, you know, someone in a session and helping them to see something in themselves, whether it's coming and sitting in a podcast with you, whether it's, you know, whether it's flying to another country and running a 3-day workshop, like it's service is the same no matter where or what or who it is. And I think what we do is we try to measure things. We try to think that this is less important than that, and it's actually not. It's just, I'm just in a chapter of really being in service to this work and to helping people understand it because it changed my life completely, and I just want it to have that same impact or as little as possible for as many people as possible.
How good. That's amazing. We have a closing like tradition on this podcast. It's inspired by Stephen actually, where the last guest sends in a question for the next guest. So,
great. I love that.
So they've written, what's one lesson you learnt the hard way that has now had a positive influence on how you live your life?
One lesson I learnt the hard way.
That now has a positive impact on you today.
Oh, gosh, that's a hard one. There's been so many. It's hard to pick just one. Hard lesson. So when you say lesson, do you mean?
I'm assuming like, one lesson you've learnt the hard way. So something that's, you know, thrown you off, you know, and you've learned it the hard way and now it positively has impacted your life today.
Yeah. So I would say, I would say authenticity, like the ability to be authentic. I think that for such a long time I wore a mask, and I probably still do to a point. I wore a mask of wanting to be this person that was liked in society and that was a good person. And when I went through the pandemic and I had such strong views that was so polarized to the majority, you know, there were so many times where I would peek my head out and sort of speak up, and then I'd get shut down and shamed, and I'd go back into my little hole and then I'd reach back up, and then, you know, I was blasted. I was like publicly shamed. I was written about on Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, you know, Twitter, all sorts of things. But do you know what? It was the biggest gift because if you get through that where half of Newcastle thinks that you're a really bad person just because you're questioning something, you can get through anything. Like now the level of self-esteem and confidence I have and the authenticity I live in is so strong because I got through that. I can get through anything. So, I would say that.
Yeah, I love that. Last kind of bit. This is the What's Your Why podcast. So what is your why?
Yeah, it's honestly living this life to the fullest, showing up as as best as I can for people who need me, and also having fun along the way. You know, like I lived so many years of my life without being able to have fun because of all my trauma. And life is so short. Like we need to laugh. We need to smile. We need to find joy in the moments. Like there are triggers, but there are also glimmers. Can you just feel the sun on your face? Can you just listen to a kid laughing? Can you just find joy in the simplest of moments without something big needing to have happened to make you feel good?
What a great way to end the episode. Now, before we do, is there anything you want to say? Where can people find you? Maybe what services you kind of provide or anything, and how can people connect?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram, Nerida Bint. I love to connect on Instagram, so if you find this helpful, please, send me a message. My website, neridabint.com, Facebook. I do have a TikTok account. I don't really post on it, and YouTube. But I would say I'm most present on Instagram.
There we go. There we have it. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching this episode. Last one of the year. So I'll see you guys in 2025 where we'll ramp it up a notch, hopefully. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. See you guys later.